KEOC News, your eyes on the city with me, Jessica Adams. Next up, it's a big day for justice. Convicted cop killer and international smuggling kingpin, Charles Jericho, faces sentencing later today. An as-yet unnamed police officer was instrumental in Jericho's arrest.
2011's Driver San Francisco is a fantastic game. It revitalized the floundering Driver series by taking the franchise back to its roots while injecting the formula with something fresh. That something fresh being the shift mechanic. After ending up in a coma, John Tanner discovers he has the power to leap in and out of any driver in San Francisco. It's a clever concept, and the game takes full advantage of the idea through several creative missions and challenges. The driving is excellent, the vehicle selection is diverse, and the soundtrack slaps harder than the engine of a Shelby GT500. Driver San Francisco was one of my first Xbox 360 games, and has since become one of my favorite games of all time. But I'm not here to discuss that Driver San Francisco. I'm here to talk about Driver San Francisco on the Wii. Released the same day as its HD counterpart, Driver San Francisco is not a port. Instead, it's a prequel set before the first Driver and follows series protagonist John Tanner during his rookie years in San Francisco. Surprisingly, this version was not outsourced to another developer. It was developed in-house at Ubisoft Reflections. Unlike the HD version, the Wii Driver San Francisco received little press coverage. I remember first hearing about it in Nintendo Power, where they ran a sizable preview article about the game. Once it came out, it received a handful of mixed reviews and faded into obscurity. Most people probably aren't aware this version of the game exists. For this video, I'm going to explore Driver San Francisco on Wii and see how the game fares on Nintendo's little white console. Is it a diamond in the rough, or should it stay in the junkyard?
San Francisco used to be a fun town. Gangs would war over these streets 24/7. Gunfire was the city's soundtrack. But now, it's got so quiet, even the cops are bored.
Driver San Francisco follows John Tanner, a former street racer turned patrol cop. While out on duty with his partner Alvarez, the two get in a nasty wreck when pursuing the notorious criminal Solomon Kane. Alvarez dies, and Tanner convinces the chief to let him go undercover. As Tanner establishes himself in the criminal underworld, he makes connections with the crime kingpin Solomon Kane. Meanwhile, Officer Tobias Jones is asked to cover for Tanner. Tanner discovers Solomon Kane is planning to spark a gang war using high-grade weapons smuggled into America. After Tanner's cover is blown, Jones saves him from being killed. The two then set out to stop Kane before he has a chance to enact his plan.
Weeks is going over the plan, but I'm too mad to listen. Mad at that cop for worming his way into the operation. Mad at Mikhail for inviting him in. Mostly mad at
Driver San Francisco's story plays out like a classic buddy cop film. Tanner is young, reckless, and eager for revenge. Tobias Jones is the more level-headed of the two and keeps his eyes on Tanner. Fans of the series will appreciate seeing how Tanner and Jones' partnership came to be, as well as the origins of serious antagonist Solomon Kane. For everyone else, it's a serviceable if forgettable story filled with cookie-cutter characters, cartoony voices, and a B-movie-like presentation. The dodgy film grain and comic book style cutscenes give the game personality. My favorite aspect of the story isn't the story itself, but how it's told. The game is broken into chapters. When a new chapter begins, you either play as Tanner, Jones, or Kane. I like the different perspectives since you see the plot unfold from various points of view. Plus, it influences what type of missions you'll experience.
Jones, it's Tanner. Vinny's on the move. He's making some deal he doesn't want me in on. I need you to tail him and find out what's going down. I planted a tracker on his car. You can use your radar to locate him. Gotcha, man.
Driver San Francisco on Wii is not like its HD brother. The only thing they have in common is they're set in San Francisco and they emphasize driving. Instead of possessing people to do missions and uncover a conspiracy, you play as Tanner, Jones, or Kane, completing missions to advance the plot. What's neat is how each character has their own unique missions. Tanner and Jones's missions play like classic Driver. You'll tail suspects, take down vehicles, and get out of sticky situations.
You ready for fireworks display?
One this city will never forget. I just gotta leave a few parcels with the dogfish, a few more with the dragon ladies. Stand back and watch this show.
Kane is about creating chaos. Many of his missions involve destroying property or inciting violence. With each new chapter, new side missions are unlocked. These side missions let you participate in races, destroy criminal operations, or take down wanted suspects. If you don't want to do those, then you can cruise the streets to look for collectibles or complete in-game achievements to unlock an assortment of goodies. On paper, this sounds fun, if a bit familiar, but there's one big hurdle: the controls.
Okay, Tanner, the chief says he wants me to run you through your paces. Don't panic, I'll start you off with a few simple maneuvers before we get on to anything too challenging, and I'll do my best to use words of 2 syllables or less. I'd hate to confuse you while you're trying to find reverse.
Driver San Francisco's controls are overwhelming. There are too many functions crammed onto the Wii Remote and Nunchuck. Braking and accelerating are done with C and Z. You swipe the Wii Remote to do melee attacks. You press left or right on the D-pad to slow down time or use guns. You hold A and tilt the remote to drive on 2 wheels.
Everybody got that?
The opening tutorial teaches you the basic controls and acts as a throwback to Driver's infamous parking garage. It's neat, but after playing with these controls, expect your hands to cramp up.
And try not to spook him. Is the word stealthy in your vocabulary?
There are some interesting concepts. Several missions involve locating a target using a radar. The radar is activated by holding the Wii Remote vertically and tilting it left to right. In one mission, Kane needs to disable ley lines by listening to commands given to him through the remote speaker. Melee is done by swiping the remote left, right, or up. The problem is the game misreads your motions. When you swipe left, the game may think you swiped right and vice versa. You need to be precise with your swipes or else you'll be crashing into cars regularly. Reflection should have gone easy on the various gestures, or at least let the player use the classic controller. As it stands, the controls feel like being asked to pat your head and rub your belly while riding a unicycle.
I don't believe this! You totaled my ride!
You shouldn't run from the police. I just want to ask you a few questions.
You always ask so nicely.
Once you get used to the controls, you will find Driver San Francisco is a decent game. The vehicle handling is tight and responsive, which makes cruising the streets that more enjoyable. Though you can't possess people, you unlock new abilities as the game progresses. These include Nitro, Slow Motion, and Reckless, which lets you use guns. What's amusing is all cars share the same powers. No matter what car you pick, each one has Nitro and can pop onto 2 wheels anytime. The gunplay is just as fun because you get access to weapons like an assault rifle and even a rocket launcher.
He's dead.
Ignoring how they're able to drive and shoot bazookas simultaneously, the gunplay is fun and it makes the combat more bearable. Completing missions, optional bonus objectives, or doing any driving earns XP. Earn enough, and you earn a skill point to spend. There's a decent variety of upgrades to unlock, whether it's increasing your vehicle's top speed, boosting your weapon's firepower, or the distance to which collectibles appear on your radar. Driver San Francisco isn't terribly difficult, but some of the later missions are challenging. However, the AI is both dumb and dangerous. Civilians fail to get out of the way, and there were quite a few occasions when enemies got stuck on walls. On the flip side, the police are unrelenting. Instead of a felony meter, you have a badge system a la GTA, where the higher the rating, the more aggressive the cops are. Like in Driver, they'll set up blockades and have some serious rubber banding issues. To lose your wanted level, you need to get out of their radius or collect police badges scattered across the city. Still, these guys are unstoppable. No matter how fast you drive or how many alleys you duck down, they'll always find you. I found the easiest way to shake them was to drive into an open area like a park. For some reason, their AI has a hard time keeping up with you, which is good. The police and driver were aggressive, but this game makes driver look like child's play. Besides the story, there are several unique multiplayer modes, plus Wii to DS functionality. Connecting the DS to the Wii lets you do things like use the system as a map, place waypoints, or provide mission support. I couldn't test this myself, but it's a clever use of the handheld and gives your friends something to do. Multiplayer includes drop in and drop out, where the second player provides supporting fire during the story. There are also a handful of co-op missions, as well as party modes like Race, Eliminator, Pass the Bomb, and Gold Rush. It's remarkable Ubisoft Reflections provides so many options, but I think it speaks to the bigger picture of how they made this version as distinct as possible. It has its flaws, but I appreciate the effort put into Driver San Francisco.
Your rep is on the rise, Tanner. Don't relax though, there's more work to do. We've been tracking...
Visually, the game is equal parts impressive and unimpressive. San Francisco is big and diverse. Besides the city streets, there are suburban neighborhoods, backwoods alleys, and you can even drive over to Alcatraz. While it's clear some effort was put into the graphics, there are several cut corners. For starters, there are no pedestrians. Despite the cars and trolleys milling around, San Francisco feels empty. I'm not sure if this is because of technical limitations, but the lack of pedestrians makes the city feel like a ghost town. It doesn't help there are no people during in-game cinematics, only shots of cars. Showing cars at different angles does little to keep you invested, it only makes you wonder how they're able to interact with each other. The comic book cinematics look fine, so it makes me wonder why they didn't try a mixture of both like they did the CG and in-game graphics of the HD game. Also, many of the vehicles are lifted from Driver 3 and Driver Parallel lines. I didn't notice this at first, but when playing Driver 3, I recognized several cars from Driver San Francisco. As for the sound, the campy voice acting is amusing. Like Driver, it's incredibly cheesy and many character voices are cartoony, but I couldn't help but smile the whole time. The music is recycled from the HD version. Although the track selection is solid, the handful of repeating songs gets old.
What? We don't even get a mention?
Kane's not coming out till I'm drawing Social Security. That's enough for me.
You want a drink to that?
We got cases waiting.
Man, what do you do to relax?
I'll race you to the station.
If Driver San Francisco on 360, PS3, and PC is the big dog who gets all the love and affection, then Driver San Francisco on Wii is the scrappy underdog who, while not as great, does its best to stand on its own and be distinct as possible. Wii ports of 360 PS3 games were always considered inferior. The graphics weren't as sharp, the controls relied more on waggling, and content had to be cut or altered. Driver San Francisco doesn't try to imitate its big brother. Instead, it's a completely original experience. As flawed as it is, I enjoy it. The controls are cumbersome, but there's fun driving to be had here. Plus, the rotating cast of characters means each one has their own unique types of missions. Tanner and Jones's missions harken back to classic Driver, while Kane's missions remind me of the PS2 hidden gem Roadkill. The open world gameplay treads familiar territory, but it's done well. Driver San Francisco on Wii could have easily been a cobbled together, low-rank copy of the HD version, but it isn't. If you can put up with the iffy controls and inconsistent AI, there's fun to be had here. Driver San Francisco for 360, PS3, and PC is a superior choice simply because it's a fantastic game. But Driver San Francisco on Wii is a commendable effort. Just be sure to have an extra controller or DS on standby.